I told my sister that gentle parenting is BS and kicked them out after what her kids did at my house. So, my sister Elizabeth and I have always had a rocky relationship. She's the kind of person who jumps on every new parenting trend like it's the second coming. The latest one? Gentle parenting. Now, I'm all for treating kids with respect, but this was on a whole other level. It all started when Elizabeth asked if she and her two kids, Josh, 6, and Emma, 4, could crash at my place for a week. They were getting their house fumigated or something, and she promised they'd be on their best behavior. I was skeptical, but figured, hey, family is family. They showed up on a Saturday morning, and right away, it was chaos. Josh ran through my living room, knocking over a vase, while Emma started screaming because she wanted to play with my cat, who clearly wasn't having it. Elizabeth just stood there, smiling like a proud mom. "Aren't they adorable?" she said. Adorable wasn't the word I'd use, but I bit my tongue. As the day went on, it became clear that Elizabeth's idea of parenting was letting her kids do whatever the hell they wanted. They jumped on my couch, drew on my walls, and at one point, Josh tried to flush his toy car down the toilet. Elizabeth's response, "They're just expressing themselves." By the time dinner rolled around, I was ready to lose it. I had made a nice meal, but of course, Josh and Emma refused to eat anything that wasn't chicken nuggets. Elizabeth didn't even try to make them eat. Instead, she just handed them her phone to play games while they picked at their food. I took a deep breath and tried to keep calm. This was just the first day. Maybe things would get better. Spoiler alert, they didn't. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of screaming. Not just any screaming, but the kind that makes you think someone's getting murdered. I rushed out of my bedroom to find Josh and Emma fighting over a toy in the middle of the living room. Elizabeth was sitting on the couch, sipping her coffee and scrolling through Instagram. "Elizabeth, do something!" I shouted. She looked up, barely fazed. "They need to learn to resolve their own conflicts." "Are you freaking kidding me?" I tried to separate them, but Josh bit my arm and Emma started crying even louder. "This is ridiculous," I muttered, finally prying them apart. Later that day, we decided to take the kids to the park to burn off some energy. I thought it might help them calm down. We got there, and of course, the kids went wild. Josh nearly knocked over a toddler, and Emma threw sand in some kid's face. I was mortified. Elizabeth's solution? "Kids will be kids," she said with a shrug. I tried to intervene, but every time I did, Elizabeth would give me this look like I was the crazy one. "Chloe, you need to relax. They're just exploring their boundaries." Boundaries? They didn't have any boundaries. By the time we got back to my place, I was done. I told Elizabeth that I was going to my room to lie down for a bit. I needed a break from the madness. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard a crash. I bolted out of bed to find that Josh had knocked over my bookshelf, and there were books and broken knickknacks everywhere. Emma was crying because she got hit by one of the falling books. "Elizabeth!" I yelled. "Get in here!" She sauntered in, calm as ever. "Oh, don't worry, Chloe. It's just stuff. We can clean it up." I stared at her, speechless. How could she be so nonchalant? That was the moment I realized that gentle parenting, or whatever the hell she was doing, was complete and utter BS. Things escalated quickly after that. The kids continued to run wild, and Elizabeth kept making excuses for their behavior. My patience was wearing thin, but I kept telling myself that it was only for a week. I could survive this. Right, wrong. It was Wednesday when everything came to a head. I had an important work call that day, so I told Elizabeth I needed the house to be quiet for an hour. She promised she'd take the kids out, but of course, that didn't happen. Just as my call started, Josh and Emma burst into my office, screaming and chasing each other. I tried to shoo them out, but they were relentless. I ended up muting myself and yelling at Elizabeth to get her kids under control. She finally dragged them out, but the damage was done. I was beyond embarrassed and frustrated. After my call, I found the kids in the kitchen, covered in flour and sugar. They had decided to bake cookies, unsupervised, and had made an absolute mess. Elizabeth was nowhere to be found. I cleaned them up and started to get the kitchen back in order when Elizabeth strolled in with a latte. "Oh, did they make a mess?" she said, laughing. "They're so creative." I lost it. "Elizabeth, this is insane. Your kids are out of control, and you're just letting it happen." She looked taken aback. "Chloe, you don't understand. Gentle parenting is about letting them learn and grow without harsh discipline." "Harsh discipline?" I scoffed. "You're not disciplining them at all. They're little monsters because you don't set any boundaries." Elizabeth crossed her arms. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is how I choose to raise my kids." "Well, they can't stay here if this is how it's going to be," I snapped. "I can't take this chaos anymore." Elizabeth and I didn't speak much after that. She sulked around the house, probably waiting for me to apologize, but I wasn't going to. I had reached my breaking point. On Friday, I came home from work to find Josh and Emma had taken their destructive behavior to a new level. They had found markers and decided to redecorate my living room walls with their art. My beige walls were now covered in colorful scribbles. "Elizabeth!" I shouted. "Look what your kids have done!" She came in, took one look, and shrugged. "It's just a wall, Chloe. We can repaint it." I couldn't believe her. "This is not okay. You need to discipline them, or I will." She looked at me horrified. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, watch me," I said, grabbing the markers from the kids and telling them to sit down. They looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Elizabeth started to protest, but I held up my hand. "Enough, Elizabeth. I've had it. You need to leave now." She stared at me, shocked. "You're kicking us out?" "Yes, I am," I said firmly. "You can't stay here if you're going to let your kids destroy my house and disrupt my life." Elizabeth grabbed her phone and started calling our mom, probably to get her to intervene. But I didn't care. I went to their room and started packing their things. "Chloe, you can't do this," she said, following me. "We don't have anywhere else to go." "That's not my problem," I said, stuffing clothes into a suitcase. "You should have thought about that before you let your kids run wild." Elizabeth left that night, furious and with a lot of dramatic tears, dragging her kids behind her. I felt a mix of relief and guilt, but mostly relief. My house was quiet again, and I could finally breathe. The next few days were peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had done something terrible. Our mom called, and of course Elizabeth had told her a very different version of events. I explained my side, and to my surprise, Mom was on my side. She said that Elizabeth needed a wake-up call, and maybe this would be it. Elizabeth and I didn't speak for weeks. I missed her, but I didn't miss the chaos. Eventually, she called and apologized. Sort of. She said she didn't realize how out of control things had gotten, and that she was considering a different approach to parenting. I don't know if she's really going to change, but at least she acknowledged the problem. For now, we're keeping our distance and trying to rebuild our relationship slowly. Looking back, I don't regret kicking them out. It was a tough decision, but it was the right one. Sometimes you have to set boundaries, even with family. I just hope Elizabeth finds a balance that works for her and her kids, because gentle parenting, as she practiced it, was absolute BS. And that's my story, family drama, right? But hey, sometimes you have to put your foot down to maintain your sanity.